Welcome back. There is no debate on what the goals of the G20 summit are, but there is little consensus on how to achieve them. One of the key issues discussed was regulation. Nearly everybody expects more international coordination and regulations, but they can't seem to agree on how much. Ahead of the summit, French President Nicolas Sarkozy insisted on tight regulations, something the US is not keen to push for. He also hinted at the possibility of leaving the summit if the challenges are not tackled head-on. When asked about it at the summit, he said,
First of all, one, it's annoying for me to leave when I've just arrived. Two, Angela Merkel and I are exactly on the same line. We don't want to win for the sake of winning for us. We think our positions are sensible, and we see that we are making progress. We want some kind of regulation, given the disaster that deregulation has represented.
Another key sticking issue was if government should bail out ailing companies with taxpayers' money. The US and Britain supported it, while France and Germany strongly resisted the move. In line with that, the US bailed out American car makers GM and Chrysler with government loans, whereas Mercedes from Germany was forced to sell 1/4 of its shares to Gulf investors to salvage it. Though the differences were downplayed during the summit, Obama conceded to them and expressed his desire to reach a compromise.
I know that the G20 nations are appropriately pursuing their own approaches. And as Gordon indicated, we're not going to agree on every point. I came here to put forward our ideas, but I also came here to listen, not to lecture.
Well, we're still joined by our guests in Nairobi, Ali Khan Sachu, in Washington, Vijay Ramachandran, and in Paris, Max Kaiser. Vijay, can I come to you first? Why is regulation then such a divisive issue in the United States? We're hearing criticism now from US Republicans suggesting that the president is kowtowing to a European style of socialism by bailing out these failing companies and making them state-owned.
You know, there's a lot of debate, I think, around these issues, whether or not the large American companies should be bailed out, which ones should be bailed out versus let go. There's also a lot of debate around the right level of regulation. I think there's concern in the US that there is over-regulation because of this attempt to fix the problems with this current financial mess. But my sense is that there will be some consensus reached on this issue. I think all sides recognize that we need better regulation, maybe not more regulation, maybe there's some debate around that, but I think everyone's of the belief that we need better regulation for the complex financial instruments that we find ourselves dealing with today. I think there's widespread recognition that derivatives and the kinds of instruments that have gotten us into trouble are in need of some sort of regulation. In the US, for example, the SEC needs a better understanding of these kinds of instruments. And while there might be some posturing at the summit, you know, prior to the meeting that was underway this morning, I think there will be an agreement reached on regulating financial markets better and dealing with the new kinds of instruments that we are trading in today's world. And I think that Sarkozy, Gordon Brown, Obama, Merkel will come together, I think, on this issue. And related to this, the issue of offshore tax havens, which is of great concern in the United States as well as in Europe.
Ali Khan, can I just bring you in here? Because bailing out businesses, of course,
Sure.
Isn't that sort of going against the natural laws of, you might say, business selection? The strong survive, the weak fall.
I think, you know, the United States of America was built on rewarding winners and culling losers. It was a Darwinian process, and that was what was, I think, at the heart of the success of the country. And I think what a lot of people are finding extremely uncomfortable is that we have still in place largely incompetent bank CEOs who presided over this debacle. And they have not had to take any responsibility, contrast General Motors, where Wagoner's taken off. So I think that's what's sticking in the craw of people, in people's throats. People are just quite shocked that folk who, you know, it seems to us a little bit insane to be throwing more money after money already gone bad. So I think there's a sense that, you know, the executives did not take responsibility, that we are still throwing money into what is still a black hole by all accounts. You know, these banks are not out of trouble yet. It's a bit of an optical illusion that Mr. Geithner has played with us. by giving a lot of folk a free option on this proposal, this public-private partnership, you know, it's sort of creating a veneer around the problem. The problem does still remain, Sohail, and I think that's the issue here. In terms of the Europeans, the nuances, you know, you've got 1 million French people on the streets in France. They're not going to put up with Sarkozy cozying up with the same folk who largely felt to have got us in this mess in the first place. In terms of the regulatory framework, a lot of the individuals in the United States are exactly those individuals who designed the architecture so badly and actually allowed this all to happen on their watch. And it is that which I find quite strange. I think the president needs to rely a lot more on Paul Volcker, who has the stature and the acumen and the presence to actually take control of what is a very tricky situation.
Max, you are nodding in agreement as well. Now, you know, I want to bring up the issue of responsibility, which is what Ali just touched upon. And Obama actually just said as well within these last 24 hours that the US can no longer be the sole voracious consumer. Others would also have to take on the role. I mean, was he referring to the influence of China and the emerging markets, that they will have to come on board? China's bought a lot of the US's debt.
Yeah, well, let's broaden the possible solutions here. The U.S. problems and the international banking problems are the result of too much debt ratios to equity, and these derivative products have been allowed bankers to cram on even more debt. And it's just a form of the ancient usury. Usury is the problem. So why don't we bring in the following concept? Why not bring in the possibility of introducing Sharia law into the global banking system? Sharia law is completely against usury. It's completely against all this incredible debt we've seen destroy the UK and the US economy. Well, how come nobody at the G20 is talking about that? That could be a possibility. To say it's a dichotomy between socialism and capitalism is wrong, because there's a third possibility here: socialism, capitalism, and Sharia law. Let's talk about that.
Well, let's talk about it. Who would like to start on that one? Ali Khan Satchu, perhaps? Ali,
well, on Sharia banking.
Well, Sharia, yeah. I mean, there's a large Muslim population in Kenya.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of banks coming here looking at the opportunity. I think the Sharia banks, for the most part, were fortunate enough because of the lack of leverage. And this was really a casino capitalism. It was leveraging your capital 47, 50 times. And of course, you can't afford to lose very much, and they did, and the regulators didn't spot it, and they didn't see that big build-up in risk. With Sharia banking, what we have is a much lower risk profile, an idea of equity participation, and your speaker is quite right. I mean, I like the idea of equity participation because it's also the culture of rewarding the bankers themselves. You know, they see it more as a long-term transaction. It's not just me now, this year, what is my bonus? And getting back to your consumer point, if I can tie it up a little bit with that, the US has gone from a negative savings rate to a rate of plus 6% in the space of about 4 months. This is a serious trend change, and I think the president is alerting everybody to that fact that, you know, the US will not be the outsized buyer, and really we should stop lending them tons of cash in order for them to remain that outsized buyer.
Vijaya Ramachandran in Washington, can I bring you in here? Because Saudi Arabia is the only, sort of, might say, senior Muslim state actually at this G20 meeting. Have American legislators looked at issues like possibly Sharia banking systems as a way, as a solution to possibly the problems that the world is facing at the moment? They've been very successful in countries like the United Kingdom.
You know, my sense is that they have not looked at a very wide range of options. I think they have been caught in this crisis, not seeing it coming, although there were signs for months, if not years. And I think now they're in a situation where they're under tremendous pressure to put together some sort of package that will work in the short to medium term, that will help reduce consumer unease and the incredible pessimism that pervades the population now. You know, there was a tremendous amount of hope when President Obama took office, and I think there's you know, a lot of pressure on him and his administration to turn this thing around quickly so that they don't lose that enormous political capital and social capital that they had built up during the months of the campaign. So, my sense is that they have not looked at a wide range of options, but perhaps, going forward, once the immediate pressures have eased, I'm hoping that they will undertake a wider range of reforms, talk to a wide range of people. It is reassuring that Paul Volcker is very heavily involved with the current dialogue. But I'm hoping that over the long term, they will look at other countries, other models, that they will engage in a real substantive dialogue with the emerging countries, China, India, Brazil, Russia, and others, to try to understand what their models are like.
Sure.
India, for example, regulated derivatives right from the beginning. And that might be a model that they want to look at. I don't know if anybody in the US has looked at that, but it's interesting to see the way India did it, and maybe these are models that they can learn from.
It possibly is a sign that a one-size agreement won't fit all. Ali Khan Suchu, very quickly, we're running out of time. What would you like to see as a communique coming out of this G20 meeting?
Well, I think what we're seeing, and I'll agree with your previous speakers, is we had very low expectations. We seem to be getting more than where those expectations were set. I would like to see some money in the IMF, because that's the only vehicle I can see for the more fragile economies, of which I consider sub-Saharan Africa a genre. So, and a trade deal of about $200 billion to support the lack of credit on the trade flows, because trade is absolutely cratered, Sohail. And I think, a genuine, you're seeing a change here. You're seeing a much more multi-layered, nuanced world. It's no longer unipolar world, my way or the highway. And I think everyone is working towards this greater sense of commitment and collaboration. And that's what I really want to see.
Well, we shall see what happens. Ali Khan Suchu in Nairobi, Vijaya Ramachandran in Washington, and Mats Kaiser in Paris. Thank you all for joining us on Inside Story, and thank you for joining us on this edition. We do welcome your comments and suggestions. Please do email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. We're going to leave you with a few clips from the London protesters who've already caused major concern to the British police. When asked, why are you protesting, some of them didn't know, while others, like Kimberly Winter, knew exactly what she was protesting against.
I'm a full-time carer, I look after my mum. I get £53 a week in benefits, which is not enough for what I need. We're really struggling financially. We've had to get rid of all our relief carers. We've had to cut some of our medical supplies because we just can't afford to carry on anymore. So I'm here basically to tell Mr. Brown that us carers have rights as well. Action for carers.
I like being in a big group of people.
Why are you heading into the city?
I don't know. I'm just following everyone.
There's no reason for you being here then?
Not at all.
You have no message for anyone?
No.
Why are you here?
To be together and think about our lives. What we are doing about lives of the other people, yeah?
Why are you carrying this?
I think it's quite clear. It's clear message.